I'm here with Aaron of MF Ruckus to talk about their latest record, The Front Lines of Good Times, Volume 1. I'm glad that you guys are on the front lines of good times. That's nice to know that somebody is there. So
somebody's got to do it.
Well, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it, and I'm glad you guys are the ones taking the lead on this. And knowing that it's Volume 1 gets me excited. That allows me to think that you guys will continue and set front lines for at least another volume, I'm hoping. But first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to join me on the channel today to talk about the record, talk about the band, to talk about the music.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really glad that they put the name tags on the computer, though, because I think that people are going to get confused by the two bald, bearded guys both talking to each other at the same time.
I honestly think this is past and present, right? Like you're the past because you're a young me, or I'm an old you. This is like almost something out of the Twilight Zone, or one of those shows that makes your mind wonder, like what is it, Broken Mirror or Black Mirror, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, old me. Where should I be investing all my money? Like, what should I be doing with my life? What do I need to learn?
You know what? If I tell you, then you're not going to learn any lessons.
Fair point. You just got to suffer. You got to go through it.
And if I tell you, not only that, but then you're going to mess up the whole time continuum.
Oh, right.
Paradox or
space-time continuum.
Yeah. So I got to be careful with how much information I share so that we don't screw up the future you. Or
yeah, it's a fickle thing, that space-time continuum.
That's the excuse for it. It works for everything, by the way. So let's talk about this record. How did you manage, or even how did the band manage the bumpy road that it took you guys to get to where you finally are with this album being released?
Well, the band, so years, when we were young men, like we had, like a lot of bands had, we had this, amorphous, very vague idea of making it, right? And then as we got older, we started to realize what a fleeting thing that was. We started to kind of reorient what our goals were. At one point, it was just, the goal was just sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And then it's like, get signed and tour the world. And then, we start getting older and we start having families and permanent relationships or semi-permanent relationships and wanting different things. And we started reestablishing what our why, for why we were doing what we were doing. And a lot of it became, number one, a service position, wanting to bring joy into the world by entertaining people and writing music for people, but also the band acts as a life support system for a friendship. It's, some guys have, and I've been saying this over and over again, but, some guys have car clubs, some guys have fishing boats, and some guys have rock and roll bands, and the band is really our fishing boat. And so when we were going through the rough times making the record, and also the recordings that will end up being Volume 2 and 3, because we have, I think, something like 17 starts to songs up in the studio right now, just kind of waiting to be pieced out and finished in a similar fashion to how we did the first one. Kind of what kept us going through those really hard times is being able to look forward to getting together again, being able to have the excuse to get together and rehearse, or get together and, do a run of shows, or get together and go into the studio. Our lead guitar player, Tony, he lives in Chicago, and without the band, there really wouldn't be this anchor point where we kind of have an excuse to check in regularly. You know what I mean? And in fact, when Tony and I talk about band stuff, it's usually 5 minutes updating band stuff. And then the whole rest of our 45-minute to an hour conversation is, how's the family? How's the kid? How's the new job? Yada, yada, yada. So in response to your question on how we kept going through all that, all the bumpy road, all the bumps in the road, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's the same way anybody gets through bumps in the road. it's through friendship and family and having those things in life that make it worth hanging in. And, you know, during especially the height of the pandemic and during the many losses that we dealt with throughout the process of making this record, it's like I could always return to working on the record. I could always look forward to that first show back, you know, and the plans that we had for that. And I had to stay in it no matter how much I wanted to quit, because I wanted to make sure that I got all the guys together again, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting the vibe that the front lines of Good Times Volume 1 is a little bit of what doesn't kill me makes me stronger.
Yeah. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of the comic books that go with the record,
mm-hmm.
but we've released 4 comic books and 3 of those animated into motion comics. And really what it is it's a story about, you know, the human survival instinct and the, you know, you think about the worst possible scenario, which is the end of the world and, you know, apocalypse and all that. And the story in the comic book is basically just like this group of guys that just keep together and they keep moving. And even though they're on the brink of extinction, there are people out there who want to be entertained, who want to have drinks with their friends and have a good time. And somebody's got to do it up until the very last minute. You know, I don't think even if we knew that the sun was going to explode, I think we would still want to enjoy ourselves for a little bit at the end of that time.
When you look at this album and the vision that you had when the process started, did that vision ever change due to all of these changes, due to all of these bumps in the road? Did the vision change, or maybe not change, but adapt? And the end result that we have now is slightly different, or perhaps a lot different from what you had at the beginning?
Oh, absolutely. You know, that was one thing that I had to learn to get comfortable with, was allowing time and circumstance to shape the narrative as time went on. You know, I had, when I first started working on the comic and the concept of the album, I had a very clear idea of what was about what and which characters were going to be in it and what the, you know, what the drama and the conflict was going to be. And I had a very clear idea on how the songs were going to be presented and where everything was going to show up. But, you know, circumstance forced me to have to pivot and adjust as time went on. And I'm happy with that, because the process of time, I think, made things better, and those improvements would not have happened had everything gone according to schedule. There are moments in the record where certain ideas came up at the very last minute, and they would not have happened had everything gotten done according to the original schedule, you know. And so the lesson that I took from that is to learn to trust, you know, the process. As cliche as it sounds, you have to give yourself over to the process and just trust that things take as long as they take. And sometimes you have to set them down for a while, and you have to go through some life, and you have to go through some hard times and then return to it and pick it back up again. The big difference between quitting and stopping. You know, like, I wanted to quit, but what I'm realizing now after the fact is I just stopped for a little while, for little periods of time, and then returned to it and had new information and new experience, and had honed different abilities, and opportunities presented themselves in the exact order that they needed to present them.
The album is out already, came out July 21st, so people have had a chance to listen, to digest. But we live in an era where everybody, the moment they press play on a record, they always want to categorize an album. They always want to put it under a certain umbrella. I'm not going to ask you to categorize this album, but how would you describe the sonic experience that the record offers?
I mean, we just wanted honestly, we just wanted to make a really fun rock and roll album. We wanted to do something that was unique for us. We just wanted to showcase our ideas. I don't think that there was any, whereas I had a very deliberate message that I wanted to convey with the comic books and things like that. With the album, I just wanted to take the ideas that we had at a certain period of time and produce them to the best of our ability and give the best performance that we possibly could, and then put them out into the world. The sonic experience is completely out of my control. All I contributed was the vocals and the lyrics, and participated in the production process. Our lead guitar player, Tony, he contributed his guitar playing style, and our bass player, Logan, contributed his bass playing style, and our drummer, Ty, contributed his drumming style, and our former guitar player, Parker, contributed his guitar playing style, and then Brad Smalling, the producer, produced it the way that it sounded in his mind, and I tried to release the controls as much as I possibly could. So, I mean, it's like describing a sonic experience. It's like, what's that John Lennon quote where he says, like, writing about music is like dancing about architecture or something like that? Or I can't remember what the exact quote is, but it's, I mean, we just, like I said, we just wanted to make a fun rock and roll album. We wanted to take the things that we were interested at the moment that we recorded them, and the things that we were interested in the moment we recorded them, and just let them have some life out in the world.
Okay, so let's take So let's take a different approach here. Maybe not as the singer of the band, but maybe as, if you can, put the fan hat on and take a step back and look at this album from an outside standpoint, which is very difficult to do considering how into the weeds you were with the album. When you look at the sound of this record, do you see this as a guitar-centric record, or is this a versatile guitar-sounding record?
I think that we have for many years been a very guitar-centered band. And a lot of that comes from the fact that at least since 2005 or so-ish, I have prided myself on attracting some of the best guitar players that I've ever met. Tay Hamilton, Tony Lee, and our newest guy, Gianni Giacomo, are all really fantastic players, and stylistically very different. Parker Meehan, when he was with us, he's a very inventive and unique guitar player. And so what we have always done is kind of just let the guitar players jack off, and then I try and write around whatever it is that they've produced. So for people who really like, indulgent guitar solos and really like good riffs and things like that, that's there for them. But then for the people who are also interested in diving into the lyrics and the vocal performance, I try to create something that people can sink their teeth into, and something that people can read through the lyrics and extract something useful from. But if you're just listening to it without diving in too deeply, it's just a fun, high energy guitar, rock and metal and punk record.
As a vocalist, do you take anything from this album as growth in ability that you can move it to the next record and develop yourself different and approach the record perhaps from a different standpoint? How much did this album allow you to grow as a singer?
So because of the amount of time that it took, I had a lot of time to work and hone my craft. And, it was interesting because the way we used to work on songs was we would jam in the space and then take that to the studio. Well, Tony lives in Chicago now. So when we jam, we usually jam without him, and then bring him in the rehearsal before, before we do a show. And we're doing most of our writing in the studio. We start with the riff, and we're playing it in the studio and jamming it as a live band, only with the purpose of getting the drum tracks and then laying everything on top of that little by little. So it's this very long, drawn out process. And I don't have the benefit or the luxury of being able to really work out the vocal performance in the rehearsal space before I get there. So I've had to learn to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable doing stuff in the studio as I go, and then letting some time pass and then going, hey, I don't like the way I did that. I want to do something different, or I want to layer this, or I want to have this vocal effect, or, on and on and on. Additionally, during this time, during the pandemic, when we were unable to get together and unable to play shows and really unable to go into the studio for much of the time, for pretty much an entire year, we were unable to even go up to the studio. I started doing a series of acoustic cover videos, which then led to me just jamming on my porch with my 75-year-old neighbor who's around the corner, who is a percussionist, and we would just do cover songs and jam. So I learned a lot about lyrics. I learned a lot about melody. I learned a lot about what works for my vocal range. I learned a lot about, just different songwriting styles. And so it was almost like an immersion experience for me, so that when I went back into the studio, I was definitely a better singer, better lyricist, better performer. We just did this run of shows to promote the record, and despite the fact that I blew my voice out after the first night, I felt they were some of my best performances as an entertainer, and I feel like I have less of a need to overexert myself and push my voice into being something that it isn't naturally. I feel a lot more comfortable singing in my more natural range and more natural character as a vocalist. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I don't think that would have happened without the exceptionally long period of time that it took to make the record.
If we look at that time, if you look at all of those bumps in the road, and we call that overall process a little bit chaotic, will Volume 2 be less chaotic?
So I would actually say that Volume 2 has a lot more, is a lot more of a stretch for us. So Volume 1, we started recording those tracks around 2015, 2016, probably actually got into the studio and put, track to tape 2016 or 2017. And so there's a little bit of a lag measure in that time. We went into the studio to record the 17 songs that are up there waiting for us at the studio right now, which we've been chipping away at for a while. That was March of 2020 when we went up to the studio. So what we would do is we would go into the studio all day, and then we were playing shows every night around the state of Colorado. So, it was a lot of all-night drives, and we pretty much went up there and tried to dump everything that we could foreseeably play at that time. So we have songs on there that definitely won't make a Ruckus record. Some of it we're going to break off and put onto my solo record. We've got songs that may or may not come to fruition entirely, but we've got metal stuff, punk rock stuff. We've got a Bruce Springsteen sounding kind of like, dad rock type of song. We've got some really simple 3-chord power pop stuff that I wrote. We've got stuff that's got a bit more of an emotional bent to it, which is kind of a new thing for us. Like, we, up until Frontlines of Good Times Volume 1, we were much more of like just a good time party rock band. And now we've become, you know, we've started invoking more messages into the lyrics. We got to the point where we stopped caring so much about our image as a band and our brand as a band, and we stopped saying that's not really us as much. So the new stuff that's up there is very representative of that. So we have a Dropbox folder with something like 50 or 60 rough demos in it. And then we just took the most fleshed out 17 of those demos and just went into the studio, and we just like hammered on those for a week. And then eventually we're going to piece by piece kind of build on those and see what works, what doesn't, what needs to be retooled, and then just put them out. And I think it's going to be something that the diehards definitely will follow us on, but I also think that maybe newer fans might be a little divided on.
Interesting.
You know, just because it's going to be out of our wheelhouse a little bit. But I'm excited about that. And the truth is, nobody cares.
And speaking of fans, you on that run of shows that you guys did, is there a song that gets everybody going, that gets the crowd moving, perhaps more than any other?
Well, if you look at our old stuff or older stuff, we have We Don't Party from the Thieves of Thunder record, which people really love a lot. You know, that's usually a closer or close to a closer because people get really into it. Or Gasoline from My Party Machine is a very popular one. But off the new record, people have been really responding to the Frontlines of Good Times, the title track. That's a good fist bumping one. And we've been getting a good response from Be Cool, which is the one we released the music video for. That's kind of a little bit of a, you know, thrashier, classic hardcore crossover type of one. That gets a pretty good response. Acropolis Now is one that people really like a lot. And the cool thing is that a lot of this stuff we did as singles leading up to the release. So people have had a chance to get familiar with them. Also, the single that we released the week that the album dropped, Tres Reyes, that one has gotten a really great response, and has honestly probably gotten the best immediate response out of anything we've written in recent time.
One last question for you. When you're getting ready to go on stage, or even before you're getting ready to go on stage, you're around the venue and perhaps meeting a new fan that's the first time seeing you guys. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that fans will have of the band, specifically, obviously, new fans to the band?
The biggest misconception, man, I don't know. I think it's interesting it's interesting and very gratifying when people find out what nice, boring old men we are. You know, I'm serious. You know, because when you're in a loud, grandiose, like kind of, you know, chest thumping, you know, rock and roll band like that, I think people assume that you're just going to come off stage just dumping whiskey on yourself and, you know, just being a snarling beast from another planet or something. But we're all family men. We're all like, we have all mellowed in middle age, and, you know, half of us have kids. And so we really collectively have this very kind, you know, warm, you know, open, inviting, gregarious spirit, and really enjoy spending time with the people who come to see us play. There is not one asshole in our whole team. You know, we did this last run of shows we did was a family affair. We brought in Tony's other band, which is the Blind Staggers from Chicago. They came out, and they're extended family for us, and for Tony, his direct family. You know, it's his wife, his brother-in-law. You know, a couple of his good friends are in the band, and then we brought this young kind of up and coming Denver band called Ipecac, and the oldest member of their band is 21, and they had their parents with them, and we're traveling around and doing these shows together, and it was just this big, happy, wonderful, supportive, kind, almost like, aside from all the cuss words and the party songs, like it was a family friendly environment, you know. And I think that that's a misconception that people might have coming to us for the first time, is that we're going to be this snarling, boozy, druggy, you know, bunch of jerks. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're just chill dudes.
You guys,
chill, mellow dudes.
You guys went from wanting drug, sex, and rock and roll to just rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the most important part anyway. You know, it's all designed. We're all trying to find our bliss. You know what I mean? And I think that the sex and the drugs, people think that that's like a quick route. But what I have found in my time is that the least destructive and most satisfying route is just the rock and roll part, just the music.
Yeah, you know, drugs are expensive. Sex is not what it used to be, but the rock and roll is still good.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. 100%.
The old me can tell the young me. Like that's really what you can expect as you move forward.
If I could go back in time and tell the younger version of myself something, that's probably among the top advice that I would give myself, is like, spend less time chasing these empty things and hone your craft and focus on your relationships and go on tour with your friends and have a good time, and make sure you are coherent enough to remember it all. Because someday you're going to look back and go, man, I wish I had paid more attention when that stuff was going on.
That is so true. That is, at the end of the day, those memories, that's what it's all about. Well, Aaron, thank you very much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure. We'll do this again when Volume 2 comes out. So
we'll love that.
We'll put it on our calendars. I'll make sure we'll sit down around that time. And once again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Pedro. I appreciate you and all you do, man.
All right, man. Take care. All the best.
Yep. Bye-bye.